Welcome to the Superhero of Love podcast. I am Bridget Fonger. I wrote a book called Superhero of Love, Heal Your Broken Heart, and Then Go Save the World. That book is going to be out in January 2019, but I didn't want to wait until that time to start talking to superheroes of love. And guess what? Here's the news. You are a superhero of love. And through talking to other superheroes like yourself, tapping into that little superhero inside of you, I'm hoping that you and I and all of us start feeling more and more like superheroes of love, meaning that we love and are loved more than ever before. So welcome. Let's get this party started. Welcome, superhero. I'm doing a little pre-show note for, I think, the first time ever because I missed something in this interview that I need to address. So this is, you're about to hear an interview with Arielle Ford, the amazing Arielle Ford, who's a best-selling author. And she was also a force to be reckoned with in the publishing industry before she started writing her own books. Arielle is also the sister of Debbie Ford, whose shadow work I have threaded throughout my book, and I've also mentioned her many times on this podcast. But the most important thing is I have her work threaded throughout my book, Superhero of Love. And I sent the manuscript of my book to Arielle to get her approval before I send it out to publishers. So she gave me a couple comments. I addressed those comments, and then she gave me her very generous approval. And then I went even further and asked her for more. I asked her for a blurb for the book, a quote about the book, and she gave me this amazing quote, which is, "Heartbroken, drowning in a sea of sadness, rage, fear, or anxiety, whether you are the dumper or the dumpy, breakups are devastating. This book is a life raft to discovering how to recover, heal, and move into the life of your dreams." That's the quote she gave me. And I asked her if I could then obviously use that quote to sell the book to a publisher. And I am 99.999% sure that the reason my book sold is because of that quote, because Arielle is so highly revered in the publishing industry. So I owe my book to Arielle. And I did not make that acknowledgement in this interview. I was so excited to talk to her, and I think you can hear my excitement. And so sometimes when I get really excited about an interview, I miss really big points like that one. But it made it necessary for me to do this little pre-show note. So now, given that pre-show note and my full bow, my humble bow to Arielle Ford, I now give you my interview with Arielle Ford. Thanks for coming, superhero. All right, so welcome, superheroes. We are here with a very special person in my life, Arielle Ford. Very special person in my life that I'm just meeting, really, for the first time, even though we have so many friends in common. Arielle Ford is a best-selling author. She is a love guru. She knows the secrets to finding your soulmate, as is evidenced by her international bestseller, The Soulmate Secret: Manifest the Love of Your Life with the Law of Attraction, which has been published in 21 languages and 40 countries. And she has several other groundbreaking books on the topic of love. She has led other authors also to their best-selling status in her previous life in the publishing world. And here we are in the midst of a pandemic. She's here for a couple of different reasons. One is that she thinks this is actually the perfect time to find your soulmate. And we also are going to talk a little bit about Debbie Ford's book, her sister, Debbie Ford, who I've mentioned many times in this podcast and who I mentioned throughout my book. And the reason I had Arielle read my book before it went out to publishers was that I wanted her to give me her stamp of approval on how I treated Debbie throughout the book and Debbie's work. Debbie Ford, if you don't remember, this is your first time listening to this podcast, Debbie Ford, and you don't know Debbie Ford wrote a lot of best-selling books on
on shadow work. She brought basically shadow work to the masses in the United States and beyond. And I did her workshop shadow process in 2011. And that opened up an enormous door for me and did the biggest chunk of excavation that I had had in my life up to that point, of all of the shadows that were inside and all the subconscious debris that I didn't even know was there. So I am forever grateful to her. And she actually opened the door to the path, that clearer path that led me to my spiritual teacher, Master John Douglas, too, who does more excavating. But Debbie's work consistently continues to excavate for me. So I welcome you, Arielle Ford. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm so happy that you're here.
Oh, thank you, Bridget. It's really fun to put a face to the voice.
I know, I've been so excited to talk to you. So one thing that I didn't say in that introduction is that Debbie passed away. So her books, though, you guys, her books are still out there, available to guide you through looking into your shadows, those subconscious places that are driving us that we don't know are driving us. And I cannot more highly recommend, I'm constantly recommending Debbie's books to people. But she passed away. And after she passed away, something kind of magical happened for you, Arielle. And I want you to tell them the magical story that then led to Debbie's new book, which you birthed into the world, Your Holiness, Discover the Light Within.
Okay, well, so Debbie passed away 7 years ago.
I can't believe it's been 7 years.
I know. And time is just so difficult for me these days, but I think it was about 3 years ago that I got a call from James von Praagh, and many people know who he is. He's a psychic medium. He's world famous for talking to the dead. The movie The Sixth Sense was about his life. There was also a TV show, I don't remember the name of it, that was all about his life. Anyway, he's just spectacular at what he does. And he's a longtime family friend. And I got a call from him one day, and he said, "Oh, I've just moved to San Diego, and I would love for you and your husband and your mother to come for a visit. I'd like to show you my new place." And this was the carrot he hung out for us. "And I'll do a reading for you with Debbie," which you can't actually buy a reading with James von Praagh. When he does readings, it's on a stage with 3,000 people in the audience, and a few get picked to get a reading. So of course we said yes. And he lives about, maybe an hour away from us in Rancho Santa Fe, this very shishi neighborhood with big estates. And we went to his home and got the grand tour of the giant house and the pool house and the gardens and the solar panels, and really gorgeous place. And then we sat down in his office for the reading. And as soon as he sat down and closed his eyes, Debbie came through. And the first thing out of James's mouth was Debbie saying, "Arielle, you have to write a prayer book with me." And it's like, "What, are you crazy? I don't know how to write a prayer book." And she's like, no, you have to write a prayer book with me. And it's like, "Debbie, that's never going to happen. I don't want to write my own books, let alone write your books from the other side. This is not going to happen." And then, then other stuff started to happen. And Debbie was giving different kinds of information. And there were other dead relatives that were coming through and sharing things with us. But every 5 or 10 minutes, Debbie would pop in with, "Arielle, you have to write a prayer book with me." And I was like, no frigging way. That's not going to happen.
Which is also, can I just interrupt and say it's so Debbie to just
she's
keep
very bossy, very bossy. She's still bossing me around from the other side. So then James gets this really strange look on his face, and he says to us, "She keeps talking to me about Minnie. Who's Minnie?" I was like, oh my God, now you're just showing off, James. So Debbie has a son named Bo. And what the world doesn't know is that Bo has a half-sister in London named Minnie. And on top of that, Minnie's not even her real name. That's her nickname. So I explained to James who Minnie is. And he said, oh, now it makes sense. Debbie wants you to know that she was with Bo and Minnie 2 weeks ago when Minnie was visiting. Nobody in the world knew that Minnie was in San Diego. Nobody.
You know, I've read that story before, and I just got chills, like from the top of my head all the way down to my toes. Again, right? Every time I hear that story, oh my God.
It's like so crazy. So the reading's gone on for like 90 minutes, which is a really long time because, like I said, all these other dead relatives are coming through, and Debbie's still hawking me about the prayer book. And finally, James just says to me, listen, she's not going to go away until you agree to do this book. And I said, James, how am I going to do the book? You're the one talking to her, not me. And he said, I don't know. We're going to have to figure it out. And finally, I just said, okay. I don't know how we're going to do this, Debbie, but okay. And then the reading was over. So we're driving home, and in the car on the way home, Brian, my husband, says, you know, I spent so much time with your sister. I drove her to almost all of her chemo treatments. I sat with her through the treatments, and we spent a lot of time together. And he goes, I have this vague memory of her telling me that she had written some prayers. You know, why don't you call Julie and see if she has them? Now, Julie's the woman who runs Debbie's business. And I thought, oh, okay. So I get home and I shoot Julie this very short email that says, I know this is going to sound weird, but do you have copies of any prayers that Debbie wrote? And she writes me back and she says, oh, I can do better than that. I have an entire manuscript. And I'm like, what? How is that possible? I'm Debbie's literary agent. I know everything she's ever written. How did
and
she
sister,
write,
and
right,
sister,
right, sister, manager, agent. How did I not know this? And then the next email comes in is a 200-page manuscript called Your Holiness. It's a prayer book that Debbie wrote. And, you know, and I'm writing back to Julie saying, when did this happen? How did this happen? Because the truth was, in the last couple of years of Debbie's life, even though I spoke to her often, we didn't talk about books. We were talking about experimental treatments and healing and miracles and gospel music and whatever we could. And Julie explained to me that that Debbie had written it and she had talked directly to her editor about it, and he shut her down and said he didn't want it, so she just put it away, which is why I never saw it. So I thought, okay, so I pick up the phone and I call Gideon, the editor, who's also my editor. And I said, you know, hey, Gideon, hi, it's Arielle, how are you? He's like, oh, I'm so glad you called. And I said, why? He said, I've been wanting to call you because I've been feeling so guilty because your sister always wanted to write a prayer book and I always shot her down. And I was like, well, Gideon, open your email. Today you get redemption. I just sent you the book. And 3 days later, we made a deal. And 6 months after that, the book came out. And the only thing I had to write was the foreword to the book, which shares the story of how I got my hands on the manuscript.
Oh, my God. I still have chills. I mean, it's just like waves of chills that I still am. It's just so magical.
So completely nuts, because I had no idea that she'd written this book, just none. And not only was the book written, it was done. It was edited. It was in perfect condition. I mean, it was so beautiful. So Debbie got her prayer book, and I got my wish, which was I didn't want to write a prayer book. And that's what happened. And I'm hoping there aren't any other manuscripts that I don't know about. Julie swears to me there aren't. But, you know, who knows?
But it's Debbie, so you never know.
Well, you know,
she could find a way to push it through to the other stuff from the other side.
She does. Like, I'm in the last home stretch of completing my first novel, and I never wanted to. I've written 11 nonfiction books. Writing a novel was never on my to-do list, and yet the story came to me like a movie in my head.
Wow!
Piece by piece, and I know that it's all Debbie's doing. That the way the stories unfolded, that all of this, you know, it's like this collaboration between my imagination and what she wanted to do. And I'm just about to finish it. And then not only do I know it's going to be a book, I'm even more sure it's going to be a movie.
Wow.
Because of the way it unfolded in my head. So, you know, even though she doesn't have her body anymore, she is very active.
She's so busy, right?
She's so busy. Yeah. And I often get calls and emails from strangers who say to me, you know, oh, well, you don't know me and I never knew your sister, but I was walking through the bookstore and this book fell off the shelf and hit me in the head and I read it and I could feel her with me, you know, like stuff like that happens.
Yeah. So I was really close to my dad and he died in 2009. And I feel like ever since his death, our bond has actually gotten even closer and closer and closer. Do you feel that way?
Totally. Yes, because there's nothing in the way of the connection. And in the beginning, I didn't trust the communication because I would feel her talking to me and she would say things and she would make demands of me that I didn't want to do. But I learned, and every time I would do it, like she'd say, tell so-and-so X, Y, and Z. And it's like, I can't do that. That's so weird. I can't call them up and tell them X, Y, and Z. But I would. And then they'd like burst out crying saying, oh my God, that of course Debbie told you to tell me that I needed to be reminded of this, that, or the other thing. So now when she's talking to me, I no longer question it. I mean, sometimes I still resist it because sometimes it's pretty weird, but we do have a much faster communication.
Yeah, and you guys are really different. Like you both are brilliant in your own ways, but the way that you do, the way that you write, the way, you know, everything, your work is very different, even though there's so many overlaps.
Not twins.
Right.
No, and really, we picked, you know, it's like we both had her book, Spiritual Divorce, and my book, Hot Chocolate for the Mystical Lover, 101 True Stories of How Soulmates Met. Those two books came out on the same day. So I'm writing about the light side of love, and she's writing about the end and the dark side of love. And, you know,
that's hilarious.
So we had all the bases covered.
Right. I love it. I always say the name of her book incorrectly. It's Your Holiness, Discover the Light Within. And I always call this book Drenched in Holiness.
Well, that's because it's the classic prayer in the book.
Yes. So I was wondering, do you want to read that? Because I want to give them.
I don't have it in front of me.
I have it in front of me. Do you mind if I read it?
No, go for it.
Okay. No, because I want to give them a taste of what the book is. And first of all, when I opened the book, and I've given this book to a bunch of people, and I was explaining to you, I'm not in my normal house, and all my books are in the back of my garage, which are unearthable, right? So my copy of the book. But thank you for sending me some of the prayers. And when you sent me this one, I was so happy because I remember opening it and seeing the phrase "drenched in holiness," and I just feel like even that title right now, it's washing over me, right? Okay, so I'm going to read it. This is Debbie Ford's. This is one of the prayers in her book, Your Holiness. Dear God, Spirit, Divine Mother, on this day, I ask you to grant this request. May I know who I am and what I am every moment of every day. May I be a catalyst for light and love and bringing inspiration to those whose eyes I meet. May I have the strength to stand tall in the face of conflict and the courage to speak my voice even when I'm scared. May I have the humility to follow my heart and the passion to live my soul's desires. May I seek to know the highest truth and dismiss the gravitational pull of my lower self. May I embrace and love the totality of myself, my darkness as well as my light. May I be brave enough to hear my heart, to let it soften so that I may gracefully choose faith over fear. Today is my day to surrender anything that stands between the sacredness of my humanity and my divinity. that slays me every time.
It's absolutely breathtaking. And, the reason she wrote this book was because she believes that prayer saved her life. And when Debbie was in her late teens and 20s, she was a hardcore drug addict. And she had been in and out of 7 treatment centers. And when she was in her 7th treatment center, she knew that if she didn't make it through, that she wouldn't live much longer. Because the week before she finally committed to going to treatment again, she had consumed over 1,000 Percodan. And not just 1,000 pills of Percodan in 7 days, but she was also smoking cocaine and cigarettes at the same time. She was, way out of control. But she was always a very high-functioning addict. She could fool anybody. She always looked good, and she was running multiple businesses, and she was a mess, and she knew she was dying. And on her 3rd or 4th day of treatment center, she just had the urge to run. She just wanted to get out of there in the worst way. And so she went to the bathroom, locked the door, got on her hands and knees, and really for the first time in her life, prayed for the strength to spend one more day in treatment so that she could potentially live a full life. And she had this transformational experience where she just knew that she could make it one more day. And so prayer became her daily practice of survival. And so the book, Your Holiness, has many of her own prayers, like Drenched in Holiness, as well as favorite prayers by her favorite poets. And it's not just prayers. The book is a narrative of how she used prayer in every area of her life to rebuild herself and to succeed in life. So it's a really beautiful, personal, spiritual memoir.
I have to say that was, as a leader leading people through the shadow process, through diving into those dark places and shining light where we don't want to shine light. I have to say, I was never a drug addict, but I love the fact that she was, I love the fact that she came from the darkest, the bottom, and she was grabbing our hands and saying, nothing can stop you from doing this work.
Yeah.
Come with me. And she would, she had a way of grabbing your hand forcefully, but with great, great love.
And the other thing that was really different and special about her work is that she never promised you that you were going to wake up one day and it was all going to be better.
Right.
She told you from the beginning that you were going to spend the rest of your life shining light on your darkness. And that if you could get to acceptance that we are all both the light and the dark, and find a way to find the gold in the dark.
Mm-hmm. Right. Keep mining.
As opposed to keep resisting and saying, okay, well, I read the book, I did the workshop, how come I'm still fucked up, right?
Right. And one of the ways she did that was by having her own aha moments, like uncovering her own shadows right in front of you, which was also breathtaking. Yeah, I just got something from we can always get something from each other, unearthing one of those golden nuggets, right?
Right. Well, because that's sort of the most disappointing thing about personal growth is that you think you're going to be fixed. And whatever your core wounds are, and whatever amount of work you do on them, we are all going to die with our core wounds. They are never going away. But the good news is we can learn to manage them. We can learn to self-soothe. We can learn to love ourselves in spite of them, or what I like to call wabi-sabi love, where we seek to find the beauty and perfection in imperfection, and what Debbie would call finding the gifts, instead of being on this path of, okay, well, when I'm perfect, or when I lose the weight, or when I gain the weight, or when I do this, then I'll be worthy of love. Then I can have success. As opposed to who I am right now in this moment is enough. Not that I'm not going to keep working on myself, but I'm enough right now. I am lovable enough right now. And if we can accept the fact that we are imperfect and flawed, and that our soulmates will be imperfect and flawed, then we stand a shot at having a good life.
Yes. Speaking of good life, you guys just celebrated 2 days ago your 22nd anniversary.
Yeah.
So, just like Debbie taught from her growth experiences and from creating breakthroughs for herself, so she could lead, to grab our hands and take us. You do the same thing with people finding their soulmates, because you did that exact thing. So talk about that journey.
Well, actually, what I have, my area these days is teaching people to find love, keep love, and be love. And finding love is the absolute easiest part of it. I mean, it's so stupid simple that the only thing getting in somebody's way is, their unwillingness to participate. Really, I could teach anybody how to find love if they're willing to participate. The keeping love, that's where all the real work is, because that's where the deepest work on yourself is, because listen, let's face it, living with somebody 24/7 is not easy, and you can't change anybody and you can't fix them, so there's an art to learning how to communicate with love and respect and kindness. And there's an art to accepting yourself and accepting the other, so that's really become more of my life's work these days. And the whole being love is really, there's so many people out there, probably everybody we know, who, if you said to them, are you a spiritual being? They would say, yes, of course, I'm very spiritual, but they're lying. And how do I know they're lying? Because the people who consider themselves spiritual are some of the most judgmental people I've ever met. They are judging themselves first, and they're harshly judging themselves, and then they're judging you. Oh, they may think you're the greatest teacher when you're on stage talking, but they don't like your haircut, or they think, you should do something about your teeth, or maybe you've gained a few pounds or whatever. And because the truth is, nobody's really defined what spirituality is. And the truth is, spirituality is about having love and kindness and compassion and empathy for the other. And how do you practice that in your life? You don't judge spirituality by how many Deepak Chopra books you have and how many green drinks and hot yoga classes you're doing.
Right.
That, if hot yoga teachers and meditation teachers were spiritual, there wouldn't be constant Me Too things going on in the yoga rooms around the country, right? So just because someone does yoga or meditates is no way of gauging whether or not they're really spiritual being, or even if they're trustworthy.
Right.
What it does mean is they're trying to practice a healthy lifestyle, but they're cloaking it in this false spirituality.
Right. And it's definitely a cloak. It's a beautiful, shimmering,
yeah,
right.
Yes.
Shiny object.
I mean, that was the essence of Debbie coming up with the title for The Dark Side of the Light Chasers. Because when we first went to New York to sell that book,
which is a great primer, you guys, on shadow work. Great primer on shadow work.
I mean, that's her core book that she was on Oprah for many times. That we were talking with this woman who ran one of the biggest imprints at Penguin, and she finally just looked at, I think we called the original title of the book was like Shadow Dancing or something. And she said, I don't know if I really get this. Debbie, what do you really do? And Debbie just looked at her and said, I work on the dark side of all the light chasers. And she said, now that's a book I'll buy.
Wow. Yes.
Yeah. Because that's what it is. There's all these people, and they're all sort of getting uncloaked right now during this time of COVID, where they're all, sweetness and light, and I'm doing my practices and this and that. And in the meantime, on social media, if you follow them, they're the ones perpetrating the conspiracy theories that the virus is caused by G5 and that Bill Gates is the devil, and don't wear a mask because it's bad for your health. You know, and suddenly they have the same belief systems as the white supremacists. And I'm like pulling my hair out going, what the F? What is going on here? So, you know,
crazy fucking times.
Your job is getting harder by the day, you know, because you want people to get into an authentic place and understand, yes, we all have a light side, but baby, your dark side is even bigger than you know. And, you know, how can we work with it?
And what a great opportunity this is with all the, you know, I mean, I remember when Trump, you know, after I came out of my depression haze after he was elected.
Oh, that took me 6 months.
Right. Some people are still in it, right? Yeah. But I remember thinking, okay, I was lulled to sleep with Obama. And this is bringing up to the surface the stuff that I thought wasn't there. I thought Obama handled it or something. I don't know what crazy shit was going on in my brain.
We thought he was proof that civil rights had worked. You know, how could we have a black man in the White House if we were racist? Little did we know.
Right.
And it's worse than we could have ever imagined.
Yeah. And so it's coming to the surface.
And now people have permission.
Right. I know. And just hopefully but my point was that it's an opportunity to look inside because, and Debbie would say this too, right? The outside is just a reflection of what's going on in here, right? All of our shadows.
I'll have to say though, Jeff Malone really helped me get this distinction on this because I was spending a lot of time thinking, you know, because I'm not triggered so much anymore, but there was a time where every time I heard Trump's voice, I had rage and hate, and I just wanted to kill him. And I was like, well, what would Debbie say? And what would Debbie say? And where in me? Where's my little Trump in me? And finally, I talked to Jeff about it one day.
Who was one of Debbie's top teachers.
Debbie trained him to lead the process, and he ran her business for a while, and they were very close. And he's like part of our family. And he said to me, you can't do shadow work on a sociopath. You can't look and see them as a projection of you because it's not equal. So you could look and say, well, of course, am I a liar? Yes, he's a liar. I'm a liar. But when you look at the whole list of how he bees in terms of looking out for him and nobody else, you can't use shadow work the way we understand it to make sense of it. And which does make sense to me. So yes, do I have a little bit of Trump in me? I do, as do we all.
Yeah.
But me embracing those things isn't going to change anything on the outside.
Right. No. I know.
Getting out and voting and contributing and getting educated and taking a stand to be an anti-racist and doing all of that. Yeah. So we have to be in action, which is sort of also the flip to all the goodness and light people who just want to do a global hug and say, let's pray for peace. It's like, yeah, pray for peace and start stuffing envelopes.
Yeah. And I think I'm going to give a shout out to 2 books that I just read in the last couple of weeks. One is How to Be an Anti-Racist, which I can't more highly recommend. And I learned so much. And then Eloquent Rage by Brittany. Oh my God, I forgot her name, Brittany Cooper. She's a professor. Anyway, those are 2 unbelievable just textbooks basically on, and her book, I just lost her name. What was her name? For Eloquent? Brittany really does have you look inside. Like I had some aha moments about myself, right? And I think I really do still believe that we have to keep looking inside and looking at the pieces of all of this that are inside of us and how we are at all responsible and have been.
There's just no way that we don't have racist parts in us, especially if we're white. I'm very fortunate to be part of a couple of really big groups of other transformational leaders. And we had a whole Zoom with like 65 people, and two of our Black members led it and was explaining to us, and then gave us permission to speak, you know, where we know that we're still racist, you know, like, you know, like if I were walking down a dark street at 11 o'clock at night and I saw a Black man in a hoodie, there's no question I would cross the street. You know, that there's this innate stuff that comes in there, but we haven't had the wherewithal and the permission to speak about it, you know, and we do need to get educated. So luckily those things are happening now.
Totally. Yeah.
And I don't know that it's going to get fixed in our lifetime. You know, certainly the amount of police brutality that continues to happen, you know, week after week, it's just like, what's it going to take? I don't know. So,
but we're shining a bright light on it at least, and keeping somebody's always taking over the light. Like, I think we just kept dropping the light, right? All over these years.
Well, I think one of the, for me, a turning point moment came this week when Amy Klobuchar dropped out of the
that was
running
fantastic
to be VP, making it very clear, yes, Biden, you need to pick a woman of color to be VP. Yeah. I thought that was just like,
hallelujah. Yeah. That was great. Yeah. That was very generous.
We need more politicians willing to think beyond their small
themselves. Yes. Yeah. So back to the 22-year anniversary. So let's talk about how you conjured up your husband, because that's also a great story, which gives us a window into your work as well.
Well, it's really Law of Attraction 101. It's all it is. It's the Law of Attraction states that we draw to us the people, places, and experiences that match our state of being. So if our state of being is, I'm loved and lovable and lucky in love, that's what our experience will be. Or if, you know, we believe that I'm a loser in love and love is for other people and I'm too old and too fat and too damaged and all the good ones are taken and the one that was got away, that too will be your experience. So it's not like there's any shortage of love on the planet. Just like, at least in the Western world, there's no shortage of clean air to breathe and fresh water to drink, and there's no shortage of love on the planet. There are 7.5 billion people alive right now. Half of them are single. So even I'm not a math genius. There's, you know, hundreds of thousands of potential soulmates for everybody. There's no shortage. You know? And if you go online,
3.75 billion people to choose from, everybody.
And there's at least 40 million singles in America. 40 million, that's a lot.
Yeah.
You know, so all you have to do is get online and be really clear and specific and, you know, invest some time, just like you go online to look for a job and you know what kind of position and where you want the job to be and how much you want to get paid and how you want to feel when you're there and, you know, what the responsibilities are. You know, you put all that energy and clarity into figuring out your career, take a little of it, put it into your love life, you know. And we started off by talking about why this is the best time ever in the history of the universe to find a soulmate. I mean, it couldn't be any better than it is right now. And here's why. Okay, for one thing, all of us in America have been on lockdown, some of us for 90 days or longer, okay? We all know what it's like to be alone or living with some roommate that isn't a lover, okay? Mm-hmm. And so if your deepest desire is to be with your soulmate, okay, you're now clear about that. You also have new requirements. You now know, like, we could go into lockdown again in the future. You know, you may have been saying, oh, I really want a multimillionaire. Well, maybe that was true before, but now having multiple millions doesn't do you any good. You can't go anywhere. You know, there may be other things that are more important to you now. Or maybe they had the multiple millions and then the market crashed and the market's not coming back anytime soon. So you have to rethink, what are the heart traits and qualities and values that you want in a life partner? You now have these distinctions you didn't have on March 1st. Okay.
Right.
So it's time to redo that part. Then it's time to get online. Now, here's why getting online is so great. You can't go meet anybody for coffee at Starbucks. It's life-threatening to do that, but you can video date. And the thing that's so great about video dating is that you can ask questions you could have never asked at Starbucks.
Right.
You can dig deep from the very first question. And the very first question could be, well, who have you been in lockdown with? Now, suddenly you learn everything about them. Oh, well, my ex-wife and I are together with the 3 kids because blah, blah, blah. Or I've been all alone. Or, you know, whatever it is. You can go, and then you can ask them, well, what has been the surprising good thing about it? And then you go a little bit deeper and you ask them, well, what's really been the hardest part for you? And you find out if they have any emotional IQ and if they're willing to get real and vulnerable. So in the course of 15 minutes, you've just done 5 dates worth of investigating to see if you even want to do a second video date.
That's so great.
Yeah.
I was just realizing just a few days ago, I was like, oh my God, I haven't talked to my dear, lovable friend, Trudy Strobel, who's this amazing Holocaust survivor, an extraordinary artist. And she was supposed to have an art show that got canceled, of course, and her book launched. Her book came out about her life and her art during this time. And she's very precious to me, and I would have been very much involved in all of this activity, right, had that all taken place. And all of a sudden I realized, oh my God, I haven't talked to her in like 3 weeks. Like, do you know what I'm saying? My point is I'm focusing on, I'm doing a lot more meditation. I'm just doing more inward stuff and silence. Like I'm not on the phone as much. So I feel like, we were talking about turtle time. A friend of ours, a mutual friend of ours, is in turtle time. And I feel like I'm a turtle right now. So I'm not.
That is the appropriate place to be.
Okay.
We're in liminal space right now. You know, we're in this very delicate time from the known to the unknown. What's the future? And there's not a living person on the planet who can give you an answer. Nobody has any answers. And if they tell you they do, they're lying. There's never been a liminal time like there is now because we're going through it globally as a collective. Mm-hmm. So it's really a time to be really gentle with yourself, to nourish all of your senses as best you can. Like I've lost 20 pounds during this time, and it was never on my to-do list. I didn't plan on losing weight. It really happened because I'm not a very good cook, and I'm so bored with what I can cook that eating, I realized it wasn't so much food that I loved. It was the act of going out and being with friends and all of that is what I enjoyed. And since that's pretty much cut off and it just became a feeding time and it was boring, I ended up dropping all this weight.
Wow. You look fantastic, but you always look fantastic.
Well, I'm looking forward to going back to restaurants. I really miss it. But yeah, so we're in this liminal space, and I think we have to just be really kind to ourselves, you know, and because I went through this other phase where I thought, okay, well, every day I'm going to do my mindfulness thing twice, and I'm going to work out twice, and I'm going to do this. And then I saw that I wasn't doing it. And finally I said, oh, the hell with that. I'm just going to wake up in the morning and just say, well, what do I want to do now? And later on, what do I want to do now? And what's the next thing I want to do? Oh, I want to take a nap, or I want to read a novel, or I don't know, I'm going to binge watch TV. Oh my God, we've watched the best series on Netflix, one after the other, you know.
Yeah.
It's been so much fun.
Yeah.
So on a lot of levels, I'm grateful for this time to drop away, you know, lots of old behaviors and come up with a few new ones. And it's been also very creative for me as I'm completing my novel.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's also, you know, you guys, I always think of you as newlyweds, even though you've been married 22 years. Like, in fact, when I first heard about you and started reading about you and Brian, I was like, oh my God, did they just get married? Because they talk about, you guys talk about each other and you spark each other as if you're newlyweds, right?
Yeah.
And so I was shocked that you had been married as long as you had, which at that point was probably 15 years. And but this thing of like, I can totally imagine you guys are digging each other. Like some marriages you go, oh, I wonder how that's going behind closed doors in the pandemic.
Well, we give each other a lot of space, and one of the things we decided when we first got together was that we were going to make decisions not based on what does Arielle want or what does Brian want, but based on what is best for the relationship. And we still really operate out of that, and we know each other so well now that even though I could totally push his buttons and vice versa, we choose not to. We choose to do the kindest thing possible.
Yeah.
If somebody said, well, here's a magic wand, you could change anything. Of course, I'd have a list of things I'd change. But I've learned that, I don't want anybody changing me. So,
right.
And we, fortunately, our house is big enough that during the day we're pretty much apart because I like silence and Brian loves noise.
He loves music, right?
He loves music and he loves news.
Oh, he loves news too. Didn't know that about him.
Oh, yeah. He's a total news junkie. So, during the day I'm here in my little creativity cave and it's nice and peaceful. And he comes down to visit and I go up to visit because it's downstairs and it's great. And we share lots of information. But, I was telling somebody today, if we were in a 2-bedroom place where I couldn't be free of the noise, I probably would have killed him by now. I need silence. I need lots and lots of quiet.
I'm with you. My fantasy has always been living next door to my mate.
And you can do that. I explain to people, whatever works for you. And my stepmother's been in a relationship for 25 years now where they see each other on Tuesday nights and weekends. And this has been going on forever because after my father was her second husband. After he died, she decided she never wanted to get married again, but she did want to be in a committed relationship. But she had rules, separate households, and how much time they'd spend together. And it's worked out great.
Wow, that's so adorable. Okay, so perfect time for love, everybody. I love all those reasons. And also I think we're all getting way more clear on what turns us on, what makes us happy, what brings us joy, what lights us up, right? So we're more in touch, hopefully, with our hearts than ever before. So the road to that soulmate that you clear, but you have so many books on the subject. Again, I'm going to say the title of that, the book that has sold millions of times over in all these countries, The Soulmate Secret, Manifest the Love of Your Life with the Law of Attraction. She also wrote Turn Your Mate into Your Soulmate, and other books as well. So you can find her at arielleford.com, and I'll put the link in the podcast notes. Arielle, thank you so much, and thank you for bringing Debbie back. I got chills like a million times while you were talking. I feel like she was here with us. Should I read one more prayer to close it out?
Yeah.
Okay. God, they're so good. All right. Since this is a Superhero of Love podcast, we're going to do the Appreciative Heart, which is a really good thing to focus on during this time as well, when we want to be judging everything around us, right? Like, this is wrong, this is bad and wrong. So the Appreciative Heart. Dear God, thank you for giving me my body, my hands, my feet, and my heart. Thank you for all the people who are in my life. And thank you for giving me the ability to love, care for, and contribute to others. Thank you for allowing me to grow and evolve, to shed the old and make room for the new. Thank you for my ability to see new opportunities, to explore new paths. Thank you for giving me the ability to think for myself, and more importantly, to make wise decisions. Today, I give thanks for my right to choose new perspectives, new beliefs, new interpretations, new behaviors, new habits, and a new attitude. All God's gifts to me, all free, all accessible at any moment. Thank you, God, for waking me up to how truly blessed I really am. All the people that are seeking it, the ones that I know and the ones that I don't know, may your will be done in all things. And so it is, and it is so. Amen.
Oh, beautiful.
Thank you for bringing her book to the world. Thank you for all the books that you have brought to the world to help us all heal our hearts. You are a true superhero of love, Arielle Ford.
Thank you, Bridget.
Did you want to say anything else that we didn't cover?
The only thing, if you go to my website, there's this tab called Free Stuff, which is worth exploring. There's a lot of free stuff. And there's also a link to a free 75-minute webinar. So there's lots of good stuff on the website if you're interested in manifesting love.
That was the amazing Arielle Ford. Humble gratitude again to Arielle Ford and all that she's done for the superhero of love world. She is a true superhero of love, isn't she? Go check all of her books. Great training for every superhero of love on this planet Earth. And go to arielleford.com, find those free things that she has to offer you, and you'll see all of her books listed also there. And you can find Debbie Ford's books wherever you get your books. And the book that we were reading from today is called Your Holiness, Discover the Light Within. And you can go to debbieford.com and read more about Debbie also. Thanks for coming today, superheroes. If you like the podcast, please go rate, review it, tell your friends about it. We need more superheroes of love in the fold, and you can bring them in, you superhero. Thanks for coming. Have a great day.